Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach, and today we have with us Remy Blumenfeld, who is a Forbes columnist and founder of the Vitality Guru. Remy, welcome to the program.
Thanks so much for having me, Mike. I'm excited to be with you.
Yeah, so I always love talking to new people and learning about their business, and it's interesting to me, and I know to our listeners as well, how someone chooses to do what they're doing. And the first thing that I love starting off with is the name of a business. You know, like you remember in the cartoons, you know, the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote, it was always Acme. Well, that doesn't tell you much. And today we know Amazon as Amazon, but back in the day it was like, what is an Amazon? So when I hear Vitality Guru obviously means you are guiding and helping and coaching people. What are you coaching them in regarding vitality?
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing, Mike. You know, when I started my coaching practice, I called it 1,000 months. And I called it 1,000 months because the average human life in the West is 83 and a half years, which equals only 1,000 months. And wow. I found this so shocking that I thought that really focuses the mind, because my role as a coach is to help people live a life of purpose, grace, and ease. And somehow doing that becomes so much more important when you realize you've only got 1,000 months to do it in. And most of the people I end up coaching are halfway through that, at least by the time they get around to calling in my services. So they don't have 1,000 months left. If any, you know, they're lucky if they've got 500. So I started by calling it 1,000 months. And when I ended up explaining people the answer to the question you just asked with 1,000 months, I saw their face drain of energy and they went white and they looked really depressed. And I figured that wasn't really a good name for a coaching practice that left people feeling depressed. So what's the inverse of that, if you like, is the vitality. The vitality is what fills those 1,000 months and makes it worth living. And in a sense, everything that I was talking to you about in terms of fulfillment and purpose and grace and ease, all of that is around living a vital life, because what else is life for if not to be vital, full of energy? And of course, I'm not really coaching people in fitness, but fitness is a part of that element, vitality too. Yeah.
Well, just like, I'm certain that you don't coach people in nutrition, but that's an element. I'm certain you don't coach people in how to manage your money, but that's an element in, because if you or relationships. So it's not necessarily the label of I'm a relationship coach or I'm a nutrition coach, but as the vitality coach, all of those subsets do impact vitality, because if you are in a bad relationship, that's going to drain you. If you have money problems, that's going to drain you, and same goes with health and nutrition. Am I thinking correctly that way?
Absolutely true, Mike. You know, one of the first things I ask clients who I'm going to work with to do, and all your listeners are invited to do this too, it's completely free, is to go to my vitality.guru website and take my Wheel of Life quiz, because my Wheel of Life quiz is just that. My Wheel of Life quiz breaks down your life through a series of very simple questions that only take a few minutes into 12 different sections. And as you say, one of them is fitness, one of them is relationships, one of them is health, one of them is family, one of them is career, one of them is money. And you quickly will get to see where you are in balance and where you're out of balance in your life. And it's a really great place to start when you're looking at your life, because people often feel something's missing, but they don't quite know what. And often when people focus a lot on their careers and their finances, one of the things that goes is that sense of fun and adventure. So they often see that shows up as something that they haven't rated themselves very highly on. So my Wheel of Life quiz basically allows you to let me know, and yourself obviously, where you feel most satisfied and least satisfied in your life at any one moment. And of course it changes and it evolves, and we can't be perfectly in balance in every area of our life at any moment. You know, there's no moment where you've just come off stage and received an award and had a wonderful, fulfilling weekend with your parents and made love to your partner and gone to the gym. It just doesn't happen. So there's always some part of your life that's out of balance. But I think what's useful is to look at, maybe the last year or 2 years or even 3 years and say, over that period, have my finances been in balance? Have my career prospects been in balance? And so on and so forth.
That's a really good point, and I want to come back to that 1,000 hour or 1,000 months, because
1,000 months, yeah.
I love the concept, and I also love that you pivoted. You thought, hey, what a great, and then you noticed that people were not resonating with it. So I feel like it's a wonderful point to make in some coaching sessions and move past it. But I think that it ties into what we hear from the personal development coaches out there, like the Tony Robbins, he's the one that I first remember hearing this from. We are motivated more by, like the fear of something rather than to go toward the success of something else. So I think that that's what you just described is with that 1,000 months, that became like this negative thing. And people then almost are closed off. They don't want to hear anything else you're talking about because my mind is still reeling with this 1,000 month thing. So I like that you chose then something positive to move toward. Do you find that that's where your coaching leans, is more toward drawing people to the positive rather than getting away from a negative?
Well, I think both are really important. I think recognizing what it is we're afraid of is really important. But, it's one of those amazing things in life that whatever we focus on is what we bring into our life. So just relating to what you were saying about fear, for instance. So if I'm trying to lose weight and be fit and be healthy, but where I'm thinking is, I don't want to be fat and unhealthy, what I'm putting out there is fat and unhealthy. And vibrationally, I'm not even sure anyone quite understands how it works, but what I'm putting out, what I'm focusing on, what my mind is programming my body to do is all around the thing that I don't want. So the very thing that I don't want, which is to be fat and unhealthy, is the thing that I'm focusing on. So it's much more useful to focus on the thing that we do want. If you don't want to be poor, think about being wealthy, think about being rich. If you don't want to be unhealthy and fat, think about being fit and thin, because the thing that we're focusing on is the thing we bring into our lives.
Yeah.
And that's just one of these bizarre things you learn when you coach people.
Well, I think people hear that so much. What you focus on is what you bring about. But it kind of, in real life, I think we can see it in action how about when we're driving our vehicle and we see an accident off to the side of the road, the natural reaction is to turn and look toward that quickly and see what went on. Well, then when you look back to the lane you're in, typically you veered off just even slightly, maybe not totally in the next lane, but you veered off. And why is that? Because you probably veered off in the direction where you were looking, not a full turn. But I think that word picture relates right back to what you're saying, is what we focus on is what we're heading toward. And if you wake up and say, what a horrible day this is going to be, well, you're going to stub your toe, spill your coffee, and the cat's going to, screech at you. So I think that you're going to watch for things, how to make your initial mindset or statement line up with your day. Well, if on the other hand, if we look toward, wow, I wonder what great things would happen today, now you're always watching for it, right?
I totally agree. And yet kind of wrapped up in this is also something really interesting, which is just around that idea of the thing we're afraid of and the thing we are pulled towards. And I think a lot of that has to do with our judgments about what is good and what is bad. And I'm really careful not to judge things because, for instance, we were talking about the 1,000 months, which seems like a bad thing because it's about death and it's about how short a time we have in life, versus vitality, which is all about being energized and up. And yet neither is good or bad. They're both part of our reality. And I think recognizing that we are afraid of death, that we have a short time, but that we also want to be vital, both are very important. And, there's often a lot of judgment against negative emotions. You were saying about how we focus on a crash and then we veer off to the right, or if we think we're going to have a bad day, we do have a bad day. But, that's all true, and yet it's fine to feel low. It's fine to wake up and feel less than vital, less than energized. It's fine to recognize that that is part of our makeup, part of our balance, and
but move quickly past
be
that,
positive
right?
the whole time. Yeah, I just think to spend too much energy focusing on being positive doesn't allow. We have a range, and the range needs to be quite wide in order to feel great joy. Because I think what a lot of us do is we try and anesthetize ourselves against negative, what we believe are negative emotions: pain, grief, sadness, loss, sorrow, failure. And actually, when we feel those things less, we also feel joy and an exhilaration and abundance less too. And so I think it's really important to be fine with both. You know, if you think of yourself as a piano, you've got a big range of keys. And if you don't have the low notes, you won't have the high notes.
Yeah.
Your keyboard will just be much smaller. And I think that's also a shame.
That's a great point, because you need the low notes the same as the high notes. And in fact, I'm not a piano player. I play guitar, but my wife and daughters play piano, and I'll bet that this is an accurate statement. Sometimes you need the low note along with the high note to make this, combined sound or note even better. So it's not like either or, it's, working in conjunction with.
Yeah, and it's just allowing ourselves to feel sadness in order to allow ourselves to feel joy, to have that range, and to not label things as good or bad too quickly.
So, Remy, you're a coach that works with leaders, entrepreneurs. What do you think is maybe the biggest or most common obstacle that you see them experiencing that keeps them from achieving what they want to achieve in their dreams or their goals?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. Freud, the famous psychologist, once said that if he was given the choice between a rich patient and a poor patient, he would choose the rich patient every day, because the rich patient already knows that money can't buy them happiness. And I think what's interesting for me around coaching people who are working in creative sectors, they're doing what they want, they're living their dreams, so they can't actually blame any deficit on that, because they've chosen to be the leader of an orchestra, or the head of a publishing house, or the director of a television studio, whatever it is they might do. They're doing what other people consider to be their dream, and they're doing what they consider to be their dream. They're living a life at work that should be full of purpose and fulfillment and joy. And yet, it just often isn't. So the biggest thing that I find with clients is that they should have a life that they love, but they don't. And unpicking why that is and correcting it is part of my joy as a coach. And very often it's simply to do with that wheel of life that I talked about earlier, that some part of their life is out of balance, is suffering, is not there, is not fueling them because they're focused on another aspect. And sometimes it's because, this is a very frequent thing, Mike, actually, that we go into some sphere of endeavor because it pulls us towards it and it brings us joy. But the higher you get within that sphere, within that field, the more removed you become from the joy of whatever it was that brought you in. So you might come into music because you love playing the violin, and you end up running a symphony orchestra, and you end up doing things which are more to do with administration and banking and HR and PR and less of what you actually loved in the first place. So it's a combination of those things. It's that when we're very successful at something, which many of my clients are, and we're doing what we love, we feel we should have joy, but we often don't. So bringing that into people's lives is what I do.
Yeah. And you talk about the feeling of success needs to be aligned with values. And I think that's a really common statement that people would either or both agree with and say, yeah, I hear that all the time. My success and values need to be aligned. Otherwise, there's some, cognitive dissonance. How does that tie into your success as an entrepreneur, and then now what you're able to bring from your entrepreneurial background and then help the clients that you coach?
Well, I think I became a coach because it was more attuned with my values. I still produce TV shows. I'm still an entrepreneur, and that I support other people in their businesses. And yet my coaching is my calling. And, I was doing it unofficially without any qualification for years, because when you get to a certain level in a creative sector, what you end up doing effectively is coaching other people. The only thing is they don't know they're being coached. They didn't come for coaching. They didn't ask for coaching. They didn't want coaching, and you don't know how to do it. So I was doing it without training with people who didn't want to be coached. And having gone through the CTI, which is the Coach Training Institute process of training, I discovered everything that I didn't know. It's a bit like what I did earlier when I studied as a grief counselor. I discovered that all the things that I've been doing for years with people who had lost someone were actually not the helpful things to say or do. And so now that I'm fully qualified as a coach and have been working in this area for many years, I just feel like this is what I was brought on earth to do now. Obviously, I wasn't put on earth as a baby to coach. I think you have to have some experience in order to do it. But I found that. And it was what I was gravitating to anyway in my previous incarnation as an entrepreneur and TV producer. So it feels right to me. And when I set out to find my own coach in this field, this is kind of what called me to become a coach professionally. When I set out to find a coach for myself as an entrepreneur and TV producer, I really struggled to find somebody who understood my world and was sort of leading a life they loved as a coach. And I know this sounds strange, but when coaching is so much about supporting people to lead a life they love, you kind of want to see that your coach is leading that life too, because as Noel Coward, the British playwright, once said, and it amuses me to quote him, but he said, you know, the prow of a sinking ship is hardly the place to deliver a lecture on seamanship. And, you know, it's sort of true with coaching. Coaching from some miserable, disorganized, flailing life is not really the right place to coach people from. So,
it's like the old cliche you hear, if you want to gain weight. You know, everyone always talks about losing weight, but let's say if you want to gain weight and you weigh 100 pounds and you want to gain muscle, you're not going to go to someone that is obviously not working out, not in the gym, and visually doesn't know what they're talking about. And the same way goes with an organizational coach. If someone seems disorganized, you're not going to trust what they have to say, even though they might say the right thing. So again, values and alignment and things that you are doing personally needs to then be something that your mentees that you're mentoring is seeing in your life, and then now they feel like they're engaged because you understand where they're coming from because of your background, and then where they can go because of what they see you exuding currently.
I think that's so true, and I think particularly when people come to coaching, they want to be coached by somebody who has achieved success in a similar field. So, although the truth is, because of my training, my experience, I could equally happily coach people, and I have done, who run hedge funds or presidents of banks. But the people who gravitate towards me in the first place with more frequency than anyone else are people who are leaders in creative sectors, because that's what I have done all my life. And so they see a lot more resonance, a lot more similarity in my trajectory as a coach, having been an entrepreneur and TV executive, than they would in someone who perhaps had previously been an accountant or a teacher. So it allows me the privilege of coaching leaders across the artistic sphere, and it helps them feel heard and seen and understood by me. So it's worked. It's actually worked out incredibly well.
Hey, so Remy, let's wrap up with this question, which might take a minute or two to answer, but let's do the Reader's Digest version. When you mentioned your Wheel of Life exercise, you know, find out what you want most to create a breakthrough in your life, mainly from where you are now and where you want to be. And your website says that you help empowering entrepreneurs and leaders to create a life of purpose and grace and ease. So when someone takes that assessment quiz and sees specific gaps, okay, that's wonderful. That shows where I can attain to. What's a tip to maybe one or two things that someone can begin taking action on to make progress that way? I know that there's a whole long process and everything, but what's one or two things that someone could make some actionable steps toward?
Well, look, I'm a big one for this. So what I really encourage everyone to do is set your own goals in every area. So the Wheel of Life has 12 different quadrants, but I suggest you just do 4 or 5 pages. So on one page, just list your goals and aspirations for the year ahead. And by the way, the year can start anytime. It can start as easily in September as in the calendar year. So start the year from 1st of September and say, what do I want to achieve in this area? And one area could be health and fitness. One area could be career and finances. One area could be fun and adventure. One area could be home and holidays. One area could be personal relationships. Just put the headers on each page and then make some very clear, measurable goals that would look like success to you in that area. So you said, for instance, if one particular sphere of your Wheel of Life is out of balance, maybe it's, I don't know what, let's keep it simple, maybe it's finances. So what would success look like to you in the area of finances in the year ahead? And it's really important to commit to this, Mike, because otherwise what happens is you end up measuring yourself by what you didn't achieve or by what other people achieved in that area or what you thought you would have liked. But committing and saying, you know what, for me, finance, success in the area of finance would look like this number of sales, this number of clients, this amount of income, this amount of savings over the year, and commit to that. And then under that, how are you going to achieve it? And the same would be true, if it was weight loss and health and fitness. If I want to reach this target, which is this weight, this ability to lift this number of weights, whatever it is, how will I do that? How many times will I need to go to the gym? Do I need to hire a personal trainer? How do I need to adjust my diet? So first of all, have some very clear, measurable goals in whatever area it is you're looking to break through with, and then underpin it with some very actionable things that you can do starting tomorrow, every day. Maybe you won't do it every day, but for the course of the year. And then I advise people to put that piece of paper away, or the 5 pieces of paper if they've filled out everything, and put it away, put it in a drawer, and then at the end of the year, 12 months from now, look at it again and reassess. And what you'll see is your intentions are so powerful. What you set your mind to achieve, you miraculously do. And of course, there will be things you haven't achieved on that list. But the one incredible surprising thing is there's nothing that you will have achieved that wasn't on the list. In other words, if you say on the list, I want to go to Australia and spend 3 weeks there, and I also would like to have some weekends away in Cedar Rapids. Well, you may not go to Australia. You may go to Cedar Rapids, but you won't have gone anywhere that wasn't on the list, because you're not just going to go to New Zealand for 3 weeks unless you planned it, unless you wanted to go, unless you set your intention.
Because it wasn't on your radar, your focus, and what you focus on, you tend to get.
Completely, 100%.
I love it. Yeah. Well, Remy, what's the best way that people can learn more about you, but also to take that assessment and see their kind of assessment quiz score in the Wheel of Life exercise?
Well, you asked me about Vitality Guru, and part of the reason I chose it is it's so darn simple. You just go to www.vitality.guru, and it couldn't be simpler than that. And everything is on the homepage, and you can contact me, and you can do the Wheel of Life assessment. I will see it, you will see it, no one else will see it, but I won't contact you about it unless you ask me to. So just do the Wheel of Life, see where you're at. And hey, if you want some coaching, I coach all people all over the world, different time zones, on phone, video, Skype, whatever. So I look forward to hearing from you and your listeners.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Remy. I appreciate you coming on today. It was really good talking to you.
I really enjoyed it, Mike. Take care.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.